Hello and welcome to Stand in the Gap. I'm Sam Rohrer and I'm going to be joined by co-host Pastor Isaac Crockett. Our goal on this program is to select issues of transcending importance to all Americans and to specifically to those who love freedom, fear God, and want to make decisions which will be blessed by God. All issues are of real importance, we believe, are by their very nature, they possess some controversy. Our desire, though, is not to be controversial for controversy's sake or to confuse, but to pursue a clarifying unity built around the truth. Our prayer is that we provide a truthful consideration of all issues as God would have us to look at them. Our focus today revolves around the COVID-19 vaccine. When it comes to the SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 vaccine, regardless of what the political or special interest or globalists promote about the vaccine, one thing is for sure. The quote-unquote facts continue to change. The rules of medicine, research, and safety standards have been changed. Deception and darkness has been the cover under which this vaccine has been established as the solution to the virus, and deception remains the rule as to its safety and efficacy, and therefore it raises questions for all thinking persons. Regardless of what the politicians, the investors, the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, or even some religious leaders now are saying, some vested interest in this seems to be the case. But did you know that Pfizer themselves state on their fact sheet 3 times this statement, quote, "There is no U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, approved vaccine to prevent COVID-19. Did you know, as an example, that clinical trials are still in process? Did you know that the vaccine manufacturers state that the vaccine is being offered to prevent CV disease, but that it may not protect everyone? Did you know that they say to consider the risks versus benefits before taking? Did you know that even Pfizer websites themselves, that in other countries, they state, quote, "The approval status of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine varies worldwide," they say, in countries where the vaccine has not been approved by the relevant regulatory authority. It is an investigational drug, and its safety and efficacy have not been established, end quote. Did you know that if you decide to take this investigational drug, that you must sign a carefully worded consent form that states in clear terms that you certify that you have read the materials provided, asked and gotten satisfactory answers, understand all the risks and benefits, and that you are voluntarily assuming full responsibility for any adverse reactions and effectively give up your right to sue. Now, our title for today's program in this part 1 and next week's part 2 emphasis is this: informed or uninformed consent? Should I take the COVID vaccine? Our expert guest to help us through these 2 programs will be Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Dr. Sherri is an osteopathic medical doctor, board certified in 3 medical specialties, and widely regarded as the most knowledgeable physician on the adverse effects that vaccines can have on health. She's an author, speaker, medical researcher, and a business leader. Dr. Sherri has written several books, thousands of articles and blogs, and been interviewed hundreds of times. And with that, let me welcome to our program right now Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Sam.
Sherri, sorry for that longer introduction, but this topic is huge. You spend days talking about it. We've spent many times on our programs. As a matter of fact, you were on with me on our Stand in the Gap Today radio program a couple weeks ago on January the 8th, matter of fact, and I encourage our viewers to go there to our website, standinthegapmedia.com, and you can find this interview. But Sherri, this is what I want to do here right now, because I referred to a consent form. I'm holding a consent form right now. Most people have no idea that they have to sign away literally their life before they take the vaccine. On here it says in very small print, fine print, these things. It says this: I have read the information provided about the vaccine I'm about to receive. I've had the chance to ask questions that were answered to my satisfaction, and I understand the benefits and the risks of vaccination. My sense, Dr. Sherri, is I don't know who in the world could honestly answer those questions, because who knows what to ask. My simple question, just to get us kicked off here, do you disagree or agree with my statement that literally it's impossible to honestly even answer these statements on this consent form?
I totally agree with that, Sam. In fact, your entire introduction into the segment was spot on. It was absolutely spot on. And what people don't realize is that this isn't even a vaccine the way that normal vaccines would behave in terms of a flu shot, a measles vaccine, any other type of vaccine where you develop a particular antibody that protects you from the infection. This vaccine is actually a biomedical device, and it actually
okay, and I want you, and Dr. I want you to hold it right there, because we want to get into that in the next segment, because you begin to touch on why I'm saying it's impossible, honestly, to answer the statements about we understand what this is, the risks and the benefits, which we're going to talk about on this program. So ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're just getting into this very important area, COVID-19 vaccine. And we'll talk next about what it is, among other things. We'll be right back.
Truth, flexible or permanent? The Bible, ancient history, or powerfully relevant? Culture, a reflection of enlightenment or warning signs? The pastor, commentator, or frontline combatant? Every day, American Pastors Network speaks to these questions where and when they matter. With hundreds of affiliate radio stations nationwide, a website and mobile app screening today's headlines through the twin lenses of the Bible and the Constitution, educating, informing, equipping. This is the American Pastors Network. The time is now to stand in the gap for truth.
Informed or uninformed consent? That's the title of our program today on Stand in the Gap. And we're looking at, should I take the COVID-19 vaccine? And our expert with us today is Dr. Tenpenny. And so Dr. Tenpenny, you and Sam have already sort of opened up this can of worms, if you want to call it, or Pandora's box, talking a little bit about some of the questions surrounding just the information that the vaccine companies themselves are making folks sign off on before they receive what is being termed a vaccine. But some of the wording in there is making it clear that this is an emergency authorization, but it's not officially been approved by the FDA, and that it says it's an investigational drug and its safety and efficacy have not been established. And again, I'm reading from their own paperwork. So my question to you as an expert who has studied vaccines and immunity and things for not just a few years, but for much of your career, I think on our program before, you've spent tens of thousands of hours, just let that set in, tens of thousands of hours investigating these sort of things. Would you, as a doctor, refer a patient to do something like this? Could you say that to sign off on it, the patient has to say they think it's safe and they're going to do it? Would you say it's fully safe? And if so, why would they call it investigational, and why isn't it officially approved by our FDA?
Well, the entire process of, they call them EUAs, Emergency Utilization Authorization, was established from bills that were passed in 2003 and then in 2005. And what it actually means is that you can fast track a drug in the event of an emergency and get an approval for an authorization for approval if you meet some specific criteria. And quite frankly, the FDA has, I believe, broken federal law by issuing an emergency utilization authorization for these vaccines, because two of the criteria, in order to fast track through the animal studies, to not have long-term research to know what the long-term side effects and complications are, they approve these vaccines even though there are safer alternatives available, and the side effect from the vaccine is much greater than the actual complications of this infection. We have a virus that has a 99.9% survival rate. We already are only 6 weeks into this vaccine or so at the time of this filming, and we already have thousands and thousands of people reporting serious adverse events. So they've rushed through the development of this vaccine. They've approved it using this EUA process, which means you can bypass all the conventional ways that you have to research a product or a drug to bring it to market. We don't know what the long-term complications are, and we know that the risk of this vaccine is much greater than the risk of this infection.
And Dr. Sherri, I'm going to say I referred to it as an investigational drug. I just want to share this with our viewers as well. Now, this is off of the Pfizer website itself, and it says these words: the COVID-19 vaccine varies worldwide. In countries where the vaccine has not been approved, now that's our country too, it's not been approved here either, it's only emergency authorization. It is referred to as an investigational drug. Its safety and efficacy have not been established. Now, that is from the manufacturer's own website, so I want to share that for those who are watching so that you understand I'm not just saying this. But that leads me into the next question. From a medical perspective, Dr. Sherri, and you started to get into it in the last segment by saying this is not a vaccine. Okay, I have read things, and I've done a lot of homework, that these COVID-19 messenger RNA investigational drugs, we're referring to it, they actually, as you were saying, don't meet the definition of vaccines. And some are saying that it's actually more of a treatment, not a vaccine, so it falls into a whole different category. So go and explain just a little bit more about it. Does it meet the definition of a vaccine? You began to say it's not. Explain why it's not a vaccine and build that out for us a little bit, if you would.
The whole purpose of getting a vaccine is to inject foreign matter, inject viruses or bacterial particles and chemicals into your body to develop an antibody. The purpose of the antibody is that then we as consumers, and most physicians also, assume that by the presence of an antibody, that means that you are protected. That's what gives it the definition of being effective, that it keeps you from getting sick. Well, this particular type of product that with using the messenger RNA vehicle, which you described, has never been used in humans before. And one of the reasons is that it doesn't create the normal neutralizing antibodies that you get from, say, an MMR vaccine or a chickenpox vaccine or a flu shot. And neutralizing antibody was when you get re-exposed to the virus, the antibody globs onto that virus, neutralizes it, and keeps you from getting sick. The messenger RNA antibodies are something that are called non-neutralizing antibodies. So when you get re-exposed to that virus, it binds it loosely, carries it into the cell, and releases it. They've actually even given it a name. They call it a Trojan horse. And this non-neutralizing antibody has an effect called an antibody-dependent enhancement. They call it ADE for short, which means when you get re-exposed to just garden variety coronaviruses or to the SARS virus that's out there in circulation right now, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, what it does is it enhances the infection, and the antibody makes you sicker instead of protecting you and keeping you from getting sick.
So as we look at the problems surrounding this, one of the things that is being touted about it is that this is mRNA technology, if you would, investigational medicine, and they're saying that's actually better, or at least what I'm hearing. Some people, the benefit is this, you don't actually put the virus into your body. But can you take us into what is mRNA? I mean, it sounds kind of mysterious to me.
Well, that goes into a fairly lengthy conversation. I'll try to make it as concise as I can, is that we're talking about the genetic material of a virus. So you either have the genetic material is either DNA or RNA. And in the RNA virus, if you inject the entire virus, you can get neutralizing antibodies. When you reach inside that virus and take out a little bit of its genetic material and inject that, That's where you come up with these abnormal non-neutralizing antibodies, creating antibody-dependent enhancement, because that little tiny snip of genetic material from inside the virus then starts to replicate. And the primary thing that they are using inside of this vaccine with the messenger RNA is a piece of protein called the spike protein. And what we're trying to induce is an antibody to this spike protein. Now, there's a lot of problems with that in terms of what we are doing, and one of the reasons why that we've never been able to move investigational coronavirus vaccines or antibodies that have been developed to spike proteins when we've done the animal studies all the way back to 2002. The FDA has never allowed those antibodies to pass into human trials because of the serious side effects that have been caused by those vaccines in animals.
Dr. Sherri, I'm going to follow up with you on the response to Isaac's question in another. You said because of the nature of how the messenger RNA process works, it actually goes into the cell and it enhances, it makes the cells, and I'm going to assume the cells, all the cells in an entire body are infused with this process, so that you're saying, I want you to clarify what you said. It actually enhances the immune system, puts it on alert, so that when that person contacts again, I think you said, any other coronavirus, of which there are many, or the SARS virus, of which this is what we're talking about now, that body is going to respond in a way that's actually going to be harmful, not helpful. Is that what you're saying? And explain that just a little bit further.
That's exactly right. I mean, one of the things that happens when this messenger RNA goes into the cell, it has a programmed text. Let's just think about like a regular computer virus. It has a programmed text that causes it to start to replicate and create a lot of these spike proteins, which then creates more antibodies, which then causes this whole antibody-dependent enhancement. So it's a fairly complex physiological process, but one of the things we can say about it is that it's like having an on button, but no off button. Once that replication process starts, that your body starts making more and more of the spike proteins and more of these abnormal antibodies that carry that spike protein into the cell and cause genetic disruption, then it never stops. There's nothing that stops it. In fact, Bill Gates said in one of his interviews, we are now allowing humans to make their own vaccines. We can just inject this and make their own antibodies. The problem is with the type of antibody that's created, it makes the person sicker. And there's at least 3 mechanisms that I've mapped out that shows the dangerousness of antibodies to spike proteins.
And let me follow up one more question before we transition into some benefits and risk, which is one of the questions. If someone signs the consent form, they have to say they understand the risk and the benefits. And that would be this. A physician that you may know from Ireland was on a Stand in the Gap Today radio program with us back in December. She made a statement. She said, I would compare the enhanced system that you're talking about, the entire body on alert that's created by the messenger RNA process. She said, I would consider this kind of like a person having a peanut allergy, where the body now has developed a response that's heightened to this peanut. And when that person eats this peanut, the whole body just goes wild and that person goes into shock. Is that a comparison that would make sense to you for our listeners as well?
It's a good analogy because it's not that the first time you eat the peanut, you don't develop this allergic reaction. You have the peanut, and then you have to develop an immunological response to that. So when you eat the peanut the second time is when you can go into anaphylactic shock. The same thing with like a bee sting. You can get stung by a bee, not really have a problem. But if you develop an abnormal reaction to that, the second time you get stung by the bee is when you can go to anaphylactic shock. Well, with this messenger RNA and these abnormal loose binding antibodies that are created, it's not when you just first get the vaccine that for most people is a problem. It's when you get re-exposed to garden variety coronaviruses, which have been out in circulation for more than 60 years. There are 36 of them. 7 of them are known to infect humans. And then the new SARS-CoV-2 virus that has been associated with this pandemic. When you get just exposed to it, you don't even have to get sick. You just take it into your system, that whole reaction, that whole anaphylactic reaction can occur. And several other types of serious reactions I know we're going to talk about in a different segment.
All right, and Dr. Sherri, thank you so much for that. We're going to move now, and when we come back from the break, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin to transition into benefit versus risk. When we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Sherri, what is the benefit or benefits? And then we're going to ask her to identify what she feels to be probably the most significant risk. We'll be right back.
Stand in the Gap is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV, positively different television.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and as we close out the first section of our program on informed or uninformed consent, should I get the COVID-19 vaccine? Dr. Tenpenny, you are an expert in immunizations and vaccinations, and you've been explaining some really technical stuff for us. But I know a lot of us are saying, hey, you know what, we're in 2021. I just want to leave 2020 in the past. I want to be past this pandemic talk. I want to be past COVID-19. What do I need to do, to get out of that? And so we're hearing, it seems like a lot of people say, hey, just get the vaccine, get vaccinated. It's good for you. It's good for your neighbor. It's good for your grandparents so that you don't pass it to them. But to get it, you have to sign off on these forms that Sam has been showing us. And those forms say that you understand it, that you're informed, and that you understand the benefits and the risks. And yet, we're still looking for the proven benefits. So we're going to get into this more in our next program coming up next week about looking at the risk in particular. But if you could maybe compare and identify for us any potential benefit that even the manufacturers of this medicine themselves are offering, as opposed to the unknowns or the known risks associated with it.
Well, thank you so much for that. And just for the sake of your viewers here, I have been studying problems associated with vaccines for almost 21 years. And I've invested more than 40,000 hours of research into this. So this isn't something that I just decided last week I was going to look into. I've been doing this for a very long time, and my claim to fame, so to speak, is that I'm a researcher who has focused on problems associated with vaccines, because that is information that's not readily available. In terms of the benefit of this vaccine, I can see none. It's all risk. It's no benefit. It doesn't keep you from getting sick. It doesn't keep you from spreading the infection to other people. You've got a virus that has a 99.91% survivor rate, and yet you've got a vaccine that within a few weeks of having used it here in the United States, we have thousands of people who have already experienced serious side effects to the point where they can't function in their daily life, and some have even had anaphylactic shock. So in terms of benefits, I can see none. You get the vaccine, you're still going to have to wear a mask, social distance. You are still going to have to take on the risk of associated side effects down the road. It doesn't prevent you from getting the infection. It doesn't keep you from getting pneumonia. All it does is potentially cause serious side effects and harm.
And Dr. Sherri, great way to conclude what is here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close the program right now by asking you this question. Now, you've heard here today, we've presented the fact of this whole concept of the vaccine. We want you to be informed. We want you to know that if you decide to take the vaccine, you will sign that you understand all the materials, you understand all the risks and benefits, and you also agree to bear all financial costs if there's a problem. We'll talk about the risks and the other issue involved in the consent form in the next program. So stay with us. Again, thank you for watching us right now. Tell your friends, go back and listen to this program. You can go back and pick it up on standinthegapmedia.com. You can find it on our other website. But we want you to share this information and hope that it has been helpful to you. Confusion, we know, reigns on this issue. It's not necessary that that happens, though. Watch this program, share it with your friends. Contact us this week. Let us know that you are standing with us here on Stand in the Gap.